Yeah, and he's a business storytelling coach. So actually, he turns facts into interesting or entertaining stories to, for example, convince clients in a pitch or in meetings or something. And his topic today is why you struggle with self-promotion and what to do about it. So please give a warm welcome for Matteo Cassese.
So much for the introduction. Wonderful. First of all, I want to ask for your permission. Can I call you founders? Because I think as freelancers, as self-employed, as professionals, you struggle exactly with the same things as founders. And thanks for the authorization. Now, you know the drill. I need to see a show of hands. So, who here has hands to show? All right, thank you so much. So, in the last 2 years, who of you has gotten some new clients from a platform, like some of the sponsors, like 9 a.m. or from Upwork? Who here has got work from a platform? So I would say a quarter of the room has gotten from the platform. Who has gotten it independently from their own marketing, their own branding, etc.? So that's almost half. How did the others get clients, I wonder? Is there another way to get clients that I haven't covered? Yeah, in case, let me know in the Slido. I'm curious. And so the premise of all of this is that you are struggling, okay? Which is very presumptuous from my part, right? So who here is really happy with the amount of clients that they have? Like, they couldn't get any more. That's a good 20%. Well done. Well, I think it deserves an applause for you. Well done. You cracked the freelancing code. You are successful. Who here is doing okay, doing all right? It's quite fine. Well, almost half. And who here is really struggling? Who would benefit from having some more clients? Be honest. You want more clients. Well, at least more money, I hope. Let's see. All right. So thank you so much for playing along there. I think it's very interesting to see also connecting with the talks that we had in the morning and connecting with the sponsors that we have, that there's all these different ways of promoting yourself. Now, I'm going to assume that there's a few things that we can do better. Okay? And I'm trying not to be prescriptive today, but I want to immerse ourselves in a certain type of atmosphere. And to do that, I know a way, and that way is providing you with some quotations. For the first one, I get to share the stage with Timothée Chalamet. It's such a pleasure. Only as a slide, sorry. In the movie Dune, and a lot of you are techies, so I know that you know the book. I don't know if you haven't watched the two-part movie. I strongly suggest it. At some point, the character of Timothée Chalamet goes through a gorge and says this iconic phrase, "Our resources are limited. Fear is all we have." Does that resonate with any of you? Like, are there moments where you are in business, but you're feeling fear? Yeah, it's happening. It's happening to a few of you, but it's happening. The second quotation is from a gentleman called Joseph Campbell, that everybody who works in storytelling is sort of compelled to quote Joseph Campbell. I've given you a short version here, but I'd love to read the longer version to you, because if you find meaning in this, basically you don't need to listen to the rest of the talk. You can just go out and grab a beer. I mean, my job on this stage right now is to transition you from burnout to the party. Okay, so that's that's what I'm doing today. So if you get this, you've allow yourself the party directly. Follow your bliss. If you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while, just waiting for you, and the life you ought to be living is the one that you are living. When you see that, you begin to meet people, and they open doors to you. I say, follow your bliss, and don't be afraid. And doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. If you follow your bliss, doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anybody else. If you get this, you're done. I'm still in the process of understanding this. It's pretty tough. Okay, it's pretty profound. But the reason I wanted to share this with you is to get in tune with going right now a little bit deeper, if you would allow me. Now, this is a line. A lot of people here, for instance, are working for the sponsors, and they are regularly employed. They have a regular job, they have a regular wage. The world around us is mostly set up for this kind of people. These kinds of people thrive in teamwork, in harmony. They are players. There's nothing wrong with being a player. I'm not that line. I exist somewhere else, and I think you exist in the same space too. This is a gap. It's not a line. There's no continuity here. And this gap, for instance, is the typical gap of innovation. Like, you're the innovator, you're down here. The mainstream will adopt the technology that you're using right now in a year, in 2 years, in 10 years. That's what happens to me. I'm always an early adopter. The majority gets there a while later. It's a gap. When you tell a story, at the beginning, what you want to do is you want to create a gap. Do you want to know the story of the hobbit that gets this ring, this magic ring of power? That's the whole purpose of storytelling, is to create a gap between what you know and the whole adventure. I didn't realize that living in that gap has been my strength all along. I'm queer. Society is still very, very heteronormative. It's a gap. I tell stories. I create gaps. I'm an innovator. The majority of people don't want to deal with new stuff. We'll come back to this gap, but I'm going to posit that you also live in this gap. And by the end of the talk, I hope that you get a glimpse of the fact that this gap is beautiful. All right, but let's go to the topic at hand. Why do we struggle with self-promotion? And I'd like to just hear it from you, so we have a microphone that we can float around. Like, is there anything that you don't like about selling yourself, talking about yourself, pitching? Is there anything there? Yeah.
I think sometimes it may come across as being desperate, and I don't know, it feels wrong sometimes.
It feels wrong. Mark the words. What else? Thanks for playing along, by the way.
Basically like imposter syndrome, that you are afraid somebody else is looking at what you put out there, and they will then say, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right, reputation risk, but there is this fear. I put it in the slide, but you said it.
As a British person living in Germany, it feels both un-British and un-German to promote yourself.
Culturally, it's not allowed.
Promoting oneself, I'm giving a promise to deliver, and I don't want to let people down, so I'm fearing of not delivering.
Yeah. What if I'm not up to my words?
Don't want to be like some people selling bullshit and this American style, I'm the best of the world, come and 3 steps to solve the universe. That, everything but that.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's very interesting that we are all here, we're all diverse, we're all coming from different backgrounds, and the only image of the salesperson that we have in our minds is this sleazy individual here. Jordan Belfort, brilliantly played by Leo DiCaprio in this masterpiece from Scorsese. Is it possible? Like, I see that today you came here fully clothed. You know, you have clothing. Was there a salesperson, like sleazy salesperson at the store telling you, yeah, you really have to wear that t-shirt? No. You chose your clothes. I see you have laptops. Did you encounter a figure like this? Like the sleazy salesperson at the Apple store saying, yeah, maybe a little bit on drugs like the character from the movie? And somehow we have the mind space, the mind share for just one type of salesperson. That's plain wrong. I'm going to tell you in a second what the key to this is. But hearing your responses, I have, with the power of magic, created a slide that represents all of your responses. And this is you, and the dark pattern is fear. Most of the time, when it comes to pitching ourselves, we are dealing with fear. And when we deal with fear, we have 2 possibilities. The first possibility is adopt a framework. Go online instead, how to do sales. And you will have a procedural step-by-step guide that tells you everything you need to do. The only problem is you're going to adopt somebody else's way of doing things. You're going to do things that lead to an outcome that somebody else has defined. And you're going to come to the framework with your fear. And so the framework won't work for you, simply. It will work for you if you are able to be completely heartless, if you are able to be a complete machine. So the point I want to make here is just for you to think about this. And as a coach, I deal with this all the time. I deal with this with myself. But it's always a red flag, speaking about burnout, it's always a red flag when there is a practical problem, which is I need to deliver my value to market. Would you agree that it's a pretty practical thing? Like, people need to be able to know that I'm in the market and I'm the coach that you should hire if you want to create a mythology. That's it. It's pretty simple. But there's fear. There's blockages. I don't want to come out as sleazy. I'm fearful that my reputation won't hold, and so on. So I leave you with this just as a matter of reflection. Now, one thing that I've asked myself many, many times, especially when in 2011 I left my cushy corporate job at one of the coolest companies in the world, I would say, Warner Brothers, and I started my self-employed career. And I asked myself, how can I be useful? It sounds harmless, right? Is there anything wrong with how can I be useful? Does anything come to mind? Do you think it's harmless? Yeah, do you think it's really dangerous? It's like the end of the world? No, it doesn't feel like Thanos. It is the end of the world. Because this is not you. This is a sliver of you that is useful to the market. So in my case, what I did, how can I be useful? The first thing I said, there needs to be a deliverable. And so I immediately started creating campaigns. I didn't want to create campaigns. I didn't want to create marketing campaigns, but that's all I did. And then I realized that my clients weren't happy buying my campaigns. I wasn't happy delivering my marketing campaigns. And so I stopped and I said, how can I be useful? Again. And I came up with, well, all of the knowledge that I have on the principles of how we think and how we imagine things and how we storytell and how we create methodologies, I can compress it into how to pitch. And that's useful. Pitching is useful. You need to do it. Therefore, I can offer you that. It's useful. Now, this is totally wrong. It's totally wrong. And what I'm going to give you right now is bad advice, and I'm sorry about that. And sometimes it's okay to give you bad advice. It's just advice that is not actionable. I don't think that usefulness has anything to do with the value that you bring to the market. I think that the right questions are who you are, what is your worth. The only problem is they are overwhelming. We are not able to answer these questions. It takes me months of reflection to get to who am I, what is my worth. At least for myself, I spent 13 years of freelancing, 13 years of being the founder of myself to figure that out. And actually, one of the things that I want to do today is to transition from what you see there into something else. But the point that I want to make here is not that you need to start this deep exploration of yourselves. Maybe it's not the right time, probably it's not the right advice, and it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. But the point that I want to make is that you need to be out there in the market so that people can buy from you. And one way of being out there in the market is being in the platforms. We've seen that 20–25% of you are in the platforms, and you could get better at being in the platforms or be out there independently. Now, to make this point, I'm going to ask you, who is here, who has Apple devices, more or less? So almost the majority of you has Apple devices. Would you consider yourself a little bit of a fangirl, fanboy? Yeah. Who here has an Apple Vision Pro? Apple Vision, nobody has an Apple Vision Pro? Come on. So Apple has this brand equity, is the most powerful company in the world, has the highest, almost the highest capitalization. You are fangirls and fanboys, and you haven't gotten the Vision Pro. I'm upset. What's going on? Oh, we can't buy them in Europe. Okay. I got the wrong point. Would you buy it? Who would buy it? 2. Okay. 3, 4. Okay. Interesting, but not all of you. And the fact of the matter is that if you want to sell something, you can't. Because the process is not the process of the Leo DiCaprio character. It's the other way around. It's not about promoting yourself, but it's about being generous enough to give your potential clients the opportunity to buy from you. Nobody sells. Someone buys. Each and every one of us is never compelled to do something. And obviously, if you are the best brand in the world, at least from the brand metrics point of view, it's easier to sell a computer that you strap to your face and makes you sweat and gives you a headache. But you can do it as well, as long as you stop thinking, I need to sell, and start thinking, people can buy from me. I'm going to ask you another thing. Can you take out your phones? And could you go just privately on your banking app, check your balance, just real quick. I'll give you a second. Check your balance. Hopefully the app is responsive and I don't need to fill the time. If you've done that, do you feel worse than before? Do you feel better than before? Oh, at least one. Well done, sir. It's just money. But we establish a relationship with money. And we haven't really touched upon it when I was asking you what's so hard about selling yourself. But one of the things is, what's your relationship with money? Like, who here has the sort of Berlinish approach, like, money is a necessary evil kind of thing? Yeah, quite a few of you. It's a necessary evil. You'll never have money. Sorry. Because if it's evil, why would you want it? Who here says, you know, the more the better, I just want all of it. It's nice and good and it's all right. Okay, so you start having the right relationship with money. So I think this is also very important. When I started ideating this new phase of my business that I'm basically presenting today for the first time, where I'm not going to be that business storytelling coach anymore, I needed at least a month to think. And in reality, I needed 4 months to think. 4 months without a money pressure. Now, the financial system and good financial advice tells you save. Save money. Have reserves. When we use our reserves, we use this terminology, which is another killer. We burn our savings. Have you ever thought this idea of burning the savings, right? What I needed to do to start this new phase in my freelancing was simply to detach from all of this emotion connected to money and think that money is money. Money doesn't feel anything about me. Why do I feel stuff about money? And if you start a reflection, this is not something we can do in 5 minutes together, but if you start a reflection about your relationship with money, you will discover things. And you will discover probably some of the blockers that don't allow you to demonstrate your value for exactly what it is. Okay, my last point is very simple. We go back to the gap. Now this gap, I'm in this gap. I believe that most of you are in this gap. Also, a lot of you that might think that you are on the line, that might think that you have employment and you have all of the security and so on. I believe that some of you are in this gap. If there is one lesson that I've gotten over the years studying, not just this book, there's so many other interesting books on storytelling, on mythology, on why we do the things we do, why do we need religions, why do we believe in the power of brands, for instance? Why do we believe in the power of Apple as a brand? Why do we even think in terms of brand equity? You know, equity usually is a share in a company or how big your house is. And then we think, you know, something completely abstract becomes equity. I believe that this gap is full of something. And that something I find very beautiful, but some of you might find it very disconcerting. The gap is full of conflict. This gap is about not knowing what happens next. This gap is about me telling you really, really deep concepts and then getting a question that says, well, I don't really think that applies to me. And I get this from my clients all the time, and I love it. But most of my clients come to me and they say, you know, I did this presentation and it was fantastic, and then people started asking questions and started confronting me and pushing back on the content that I just presented. So what? Your work starts when your audience changes their minds. And the first thing we do when we change our minds, it says, no, not me. That sounds interesting in theory. I've understood the concept, but it's not me. And so living in this fear, that's our job. as founders, think of yourselves as founders. What's the fear? Decision making. Next steps. Hiring or firing. Firing the client. Promoting yourself. Everything leads to fear. Conflict. I gave them a fantastic pitch and they didn't hire me. That's a conflict. That's a conflict between your expectations and the reality. And if you take something from me today, please take this, that this is where the work begins, and it's a beautiful, fantastic place. So in this talk, I've talked a lot about fear, about pain. Let's quickly summarize where we went. We covered already a lot of ground. There's a lot more ground to cover. That's just a sliver of what I'm experiencing and what I'm exploring nowadays. I hope something resonated with you. To me, this is a light bulb thing. Like, why on earth, to a practical issue, do we have an emotional reaction? And just stay with that. Just stay with the question. Don't rush to the answer. It's not about Jordan Belfort. It's not about sleazy sales. It's about being generous enough to let people pick you instead of somebody else. We got to solve this complicated relationship, and it has to become super easy. You want a lot of it, and you don't feel anything for it. It's just money. And finally, this, I hope it stays with you, that conflict is the most powerful thing that you have in your life to leverage. I love this concept of leverage. I'd love to explore it if we had more time, but conflict is where you can change people's minds. Conflict is where you can change yourself, you can elevate yourself. It's so wonderful, and this is the real lesson of storytelling. It's not about pitching, okay? Yes, storytelling helps us create a better pitch, which I hope I'll demonstrate in a second. But it's so much deeper than that. One of the things that has happened to me, and this is why how can I be useful to me is death, is that when we bring things to work, we dumb them down. We simplify them until there is no juice left. We squeeze them to death. And instead, our job is to elevate. And this is why I'm happy to, instead of talking about storytelling from today, to talk directly about the real thing, which is mythology, which is building mythologies and understanding that we all live in a mythology. For instance, we kind of live in this internet era frontier mythology. It is a mythology, right? The dark web and innovation. And we live in this startup mythology where there's angel investors and seed funding and all of these advisors and incubators and accelerators that will allow you to soar to the riches of the IPO. All of these are mythologies, and you need to learn how to control them and to create them for your own. I want to give you a little bit of hope in all of this. A few years ago, Minouche Shafik, who is the president of Columbia University, said during a podcast interview that in the past, jobs were about muscles. Right now, they're about brains, but in the future, they'll be about the heart. I think we already live in that future. I think AI brought us straight to that future. So what's the difference between you and automation and outsourcing is your heart. And if you capture the deep meaning of that, you've solved everything. My name is Matteo Cassese, and I've started creating Mythmaker because I believe that you all are going to probably have to create a mythology, or somebody else will position you and put yourself into their mythology. Consider, for instance, social media as a mythology. And I've had this deep intuition recently about how this works, and I'd love to share it with you. If you go to mythmaker.org, you will find a one-page manifesto where there are some of the concepts that I've told you today, but maybe something even deeper that I would love to share with you. And I think now we have time for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matteo. And we do have some questions.
We also have the microphone, right? So
works.
somebody can ask questions spontaneously as well.
Yeah,
so
I gave it back. But I gave it back.
All
but
right,
we can
that's
get
all
it.
right.
It's
You
no
don't have
problem.
any voice.
Yeah, if someone
anymore.
has a question, of course, we have a microphone over here. But I also have questions in Slido. So one question is, how do you deal with cultural aspects pitching yourself? You're saying the truth about your work, but taken as overselling or even lying.
Right. It's a very counterintuitive answer. We have, as human beings, the ability to detect if we are telling the truth or not. And this is we all have it, and it's always on. It's in the subconscious, and therefore, the simple way to get out of this is to be truly yourself. Unfortunately, again, this is bad advice, because when you say that, you just say just be yourself. You don't. It's a journey. It's like follow your bliss, right? Follow your bliss is so powerful, but if you think that your bliss is sofa, Netflix, warm socks, you haven't done the work.
Okay. The next question is, what if the market you want to present yourself to has really little resources to buy, like social good markets or NGOs?
They have necessities like every single one of us, and they will differentiate how much budget is available if you are the top of your game, at the top of your market, and you're the best at what you do. I think this applies to all industries. I don't think that your yield in terms of money needs to necessarily be lower if you are on sustainability, work for NGOs, and so on. There is a cultural disconnect there where you have to be very strong in saying, I have immense value because I am myself and I am unique.
And there's it's almost a question. It's about the example with our clothing and where did we buy it and if there was a seller. If there was no clothing store, the pants would have to sell themselves though.
If there was no clothing store, you would be sewing. Yeah. But
I think it's about the seller. You know the example that you gave? Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. No, sorry, this is actually the point that I was making.
Sorry.
Yeah, stuff sells themselves. Like, you want a phone, you go out and you buy a phone. That's it. Right now you want dinner. You're going to buy dinner. Dinner sells itself. If you weren't hungry, if you'd just eaten, you wouldn't buy dinner.
Yeah, got that. Thank you. Perfect. The last one was just a quote that Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book is called Be Useful. What are you saying to this comment?
Yeah, Arnold is a giant. Okay, so let's start with and it's absolutely it's fantastic. But probably Arnold is creating a call to action to a society that he judges as lazy. I know that you're super hardworking, and I know that you already are helpful, that you already are skilled. You're over-skilled, most probably. And so this is why I trust the fact that Arnold is giving a call to action to another group. Your call to action is, what if you were just yourself? And I know this is tough advice, but we had other talks today on authenticity, and I think that is the key theme here.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Matteo Cassese. And I'm happy that Thomas and Mark are joining me on stage again.